Shalom. So in this video, we're going to talk about marriage. There are two main questions that we will answer. The first one is, what is marriage? And the second question is, how do you endow someone to be your wife? Right? Now, when dealing with marriage, the first thing you have to understand is it's not just about what's written in the Bible, but it's also about the culture and the cultural practices of marriage that was from the beginning. Most of the times we say go back to the beginning, people think go back to the beginning of Genesis, go back to Adam and Eve. But what happens is that we don't realize that even if you go back to Adam and Eve, if you don't go back to the culture that Adam and Eve was living under, the practices when it comes down to marriage, there's still going to be confusion. Because what most of us do is we take what we know about marriage in this society and then we try to incorporate it into the scriptures. So it's hard for us to distinguish between what is law, what is actually commanded, and what customs are. There are some things that are added, but do those things make what a marriage is? So we're going to go back to the scriptures and we're going to go back to the ancient culture and understand it from that standpoint. Once we understand what the practices, the cultural practices of marriage were in the ancient Hebraic culture, then now we can discern between, okay, things that are added, customs that are added to it, and we can move on from there. So we're going to start by going to the book of Genesis, chapter 24 and verse 3, right? So we're going to see that the cultural practices of marriage that was taught to Adam and Eve, Abraham, up to his time, he carried on that practice. So everything that happened with Adam and Eve was the same. It's more detailed in the way Abraham married his son Isaac, right? So let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 24, and verse 3. It says, "And I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell." So he was making an agreement with the with his servant. Go and get a wife for my son, right? But do not take a foreign wife unto my son. In the ancient Hebrew culture, it was forbidden to take a wife outside of your nation because she would be bringing in foreign beliefs and foreign practices. And this has always been the fall of many of our own people. So he didn't want him to get a wife of the Canaanites. He had to swear that he would go back to his own people. Now, the thing about ancient marriage was that marriage had always been an agreement between two families. It's not like today you're having a wedding ceremony. Guess what? You invite people from your work, from here, from there, friends, some people who you just know on social media or whatever, right? Marriage was an agreement between two families. So the fathers would make that agreement, that arrangement. So even though the agreement is between the two families and the fathers and so forth, guess what? The daughter's choice would still be respected. So let's jump down to verse 58 and hear what it says. It says, "And they called Rebekah and said unto her, Wilt thou go unto this man? And she said, I will go." So in the ancient culture, like I said, a man can be poor or whatever the case is, he wants to marry his daughter to a rich family where it would profit him, right? In this case, you're seeing that the daughter had a choice. You give your daughter a choice. Not just because it profits you, you're just going to put your daughter into any situation. You want to know that she's going to be respected. You want to know that these things are going to go on in that marriage, in that union, right? So, yes, she also had a say to say, yes, I will do it, or no, daddy, I'm not. You don't want to just use your authority because you're the father and you just, hey, you're going to marry this man. You don't want to treat your daughter that way, right? No, there is no expense in marrying your daughter. The father of the daughter receives a dowry price. The father of the son, he gives a dowry price to the father of the woman. And we saw this in in Genesis 34, verse 12 with Dinah, how what happened with Shechem and Dinah, and he said, "Hey, ask me so much dowry." He's willing to pay that. That was the normal thing in ancient culture. And it's the same here. Let's go up to verse 53. It says, "And the servant brought forth jewels of silver, and jewels of gold, and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. And he gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things." So you see, that came from Abraham to this family over here. That was a normal thing. Now, and to the woman that's going to get married, she also get gifts, right? So you have dowry and you have gifts. Dowry you give to the family, to the father, right? Gifts you can give unto the wife. So let's go up to verse 22. It says, "And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of half a shekel weight, and two bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold." So you see, they give these gifts to the woman that's going to get married. You give the dowry to the father. Now, speaking of dowry, right? Dowry was a purchase. This is going to be hard for a lot of us to understand today because the way we see marriage today is very different from what it was back then, right? Because today you don't even need to give a dowry price. Who are you going to even give it to? Her father probably is not even in her life. So when you're dealing with marriage, marriage was not an agreement between two people. Like today, this man likes this woman and they just go ahead and do stuff. Back in ancient cultures, marriage was an agreement between two families. And this is why we say, you're not just marrying this person, you're marrying into his family, into her family. You're also marrying what? Their culture. And this is why we were forbidden to marry outside of our nation, because you take on the culture, you take on the philosophies, you take on all these practices. So even when it comes down to unlawful sex, some things that were forbidden in our culture were considered normal in their culture. This is why we have Leviticus 18, Leviticus chapter 20. Those are unlawful sex for us. For them, for a lot of people back then, those were normal. It's normal behavior. Now, the groom didn't have to occupy another land for himself. He would naturally live on his father's property in ancient days, right? Now, the maid, the woman that's going to get married, guess what? Her family is at a loss because they're gonna lose a good pair of hands, meaning help or maid, whatever she used to take care of in the home, milking the father's cow, draw water for the camels, but then today it would be more business or so forth, different types of businesses, right? So they're going to lose that valuable member, that valuable help or support, and this family is going to profit that. So guess what? It's a reasonable agreement that this family compensate this family for the maid that they just lost. So when you get the 50 shekels of silver, guess what? You probably can purchase two or three maids to replace the value of your daughter. Now, this daughter, the same way she was a support or a help made in your house, in her father's house, guess what? That's the same support, that's the same help she's going to be to this man. And this is where you get from in Adam and Eve time when he says a woman should be a helpmate to the man. It's the same practice. Now, over a process of time, customs do change. So it was customary at one point that you could give part of the dowry to the daughter. Now think about a rich father. Guess what? He would give fields, lands, properties, cattle, nurses, maids, whatever he has, he would give at least half to the daughter. Right? So when we go to Genesis 24 and verse 59, you see where it says, "And they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse." You see, she got her own nurse. She had her own nurse, right? "And Abraham's servant and his men." Now, in the book of Tobit, chapter 10 and verse 10, you saw where Tobit gave his daughter all these things. But guess what? He gave it to the man as the man would be a trustee of that agreement. So that's just a change in custom. It's not a law. We sometimes we try to take customs and make a law out of it. Law meaning that it's not you're not commanded to do so. So we have to understand customs can be added, but it does not change what the culture actually is. The foundation or the basis on which something is built. Now let's talk about betrothal and marriage. This is where things get a little tricky. And like I said, sometimes we use words in the English, but the action that goes with it, we sometimes confuse ourselves. So we're going to talk about betrothal and marriage. Now, the betrothal process is where the woman was legally married but living in her father's house. I know that might be hard for us to understand because sometimes we confuse what is married and what is marriage, and we think it's the same, right? So the woman is legally married and living in her father's house. What makes a woman legally married? In the ancient culture, what makes a woman legally married? The father of the woman that's going to get married and the father of the man that's going to get married, they make an agreement, and that agreement does what? Makes it legal. So this is a state of marriage. So she is legally Isaac's wife. Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 24, and verse 55. It says, and her brother and her mother said, let the damsel abide with us a few days, at the least 10. After that she shall go. So let's say, for example, she spent those 10 days in the father's house before she went to Isaac, right? Those 10 days, guess what? She would be legally married, even though the marriage has not taken place as yet. So what happens in those 10 days if a man found her and had sex with her? What would it be considered? It would be considered adultery, right? But the law of adultery says if a man lie with another man's wife. So what would make that case an adulterous act? Because she is legally married to Isaac. And this is why the law says in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 23, it says, if a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto an husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then ye shall bring them both out unto the gate of that city, and ye shall stone them with stones that they die. The damsel because she cried not being in the city, and the man because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife. So that betrothed woman was considered what? Another man's wife. Why would they be stoned to death? Because it would be considered an act of adultery. Why it is hard for us to understand this today is because when we think of legally married, it is the state that has become our fathers today. So it is the state that has to say, this woman is married to this man is married to this woman. No, in ancient culture, it was the father. You could be married, and guess what? The priest has no knowledge of it because it was not an agreement where the priest and witnesses had to be there. The families, that's all it need. Now the marriage meant that this betrothed woman, has left her father's house to the groom, where they would do what? Consummate the marriage. Now this is where the process is complete. So to answer the question, is sex marriage? Once the father pledged the daughter unto you, the sex is the marriage. It's completed. No, everything else that surrounds this, that comes after, they are considered duties of marriage, not marriage. So they getting the health insurance, the life insurances, the bank accounts, these things are duties. They don't consummate the marriage. They don't complete the process of the marriage. That we need to understand. So once the union is legal between the families and you have sex, that sex is the marriage. If the father did not give this woman to you and you have sex, it's not considered as marriage. It's not officially consummated. It's not complete. It has to be legal by both families, not by the state. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 24, and verse 51. It says, "Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife. Leave your father's house and go to the man. Have sex and consummate, make it official." What does this remind us of? The rib he took from the man, from the family, from the father, he brought unto Adam. It's the same experience. Over here it says they took a rib from the man and brought her. It's the same process. It's always the same process. So the man stays here and the woman goes to him. And the difference with this and the wedding ceremonies of today is what? The man stands at an altar in a church with a bunch of people that has nothing to do with either families. But then the man would be in his place and the woman would leave her father and mother and go on to this man. That's how you turn a rib. That's how you turn a betrothed woman into a wife. This is marriage. Let's go down to verse 67. It says, "And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife." What did they do? They did not get a Levitical priest. They did not get a, what's the guy's name? Melchizedek, and a few witnesses to come and do anything. The legality of your union is between the two families. Now, like I said, we live in a different world today where maybe this person doesn't have a family, this person doesn't have a family. So the marriage today is just between us. And this is why it's hard to even process the fact that the families, that the marriage was a legal thing between two families. Has nothing to do with the church, has nothing to do with the Levitical priest. It was your fathers, it was your parents, it was the families. Now, this is another hard part of the ancient cultural practices of marriage that we cannot process today. Marriage was a purchase. Marriage was a purchase, and it was done in two separate things, two different events or two different acts. The first one, you made an agreement, you pay, and then later you come back for what you purchased. It's just like you're buying a car, you go, you check out the specs, you go, you check out the specs and everything that comes with it, and you pay your money. Then another time you come and you pick up the car, you pick up whatever you purchase, right? So in this case, the wife would be that possession. Not possession is like when we think in English. Oh, possession is an object. I treat it as an object. If I want to throw it down, I throw it down. Not that concept. When you go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 36, 24, and 25, what you'll understand is when you take a wife as a possession, it means that you take a help, you take a support, not a possession as in an object. We never treated women as objects. You take a wife, it means you take a helpmeet, you take a support. This is why she can be a pillar of rest. You don't take a physical object as a pillar of rest. It has to be pouring back into you. It has to be motivating you. It has to be giving you that drive, even when you feel like you don't want to get up to do this. Guess what? She is there to support you. Hey, remember this needs to be done. Oh, you're slacking up with your son? Okay, hey, remember you need to go and call your son. Remember you need to go and see your son. Remember you need to pick him up from school. Remember you need to do this. That is not a it's not an annoying figure in our lives. It's a support because sometimes we as men we fall short. We need them for that. We need that constant reminder. Even if we think it's annoying or nagging, we still need it. No, declaration of betrothal. Like I was talking about earlier about the betrothal process, right? That arrangement between the two families. When you read from verse 34, from verse 34 to 49, everything that Abraham's servant said unto this family, unto the woman's family, that would have been the betrothal agreement. He told them everything. When you getting into the declaration of betrothal, that's a very important part, which a lot of us today we skip that, we ignore it, right? And then we have all these different problems to deal with, right? Because in this declaration, guess what? From verse 34 to verse 49, you see where Abraham's servant was telling the family all these things. That would be the agreement. So it's the same way, and I'm saying this personal now. If you're gonna get with a woman, guess what? State that everything that you want in your package. So if you want a virgin, say it that hey, I want a virgin. Is she a virgin and this and that? Why would you wait until whatever when you never made an agreement that you wanted a virgin? No, you go and lie with this woman. Then you find that she's not a virgin. Then you're gonna bring up a report on her, an evil report. That was not what you agreed on. So why are you complaining about being a virgin? I mean, you're not a Levitical priest, right? So this is just a preference for you. So if it's a preference, then you should state that up front. You don't just go and lie with a woman. Oh, you're not a virgin. You're wicked and this and that. Okay, but was that the agreement that you signed up for? That she had to be a virgin? There are cases where a father can refuse a daughter, refuse where a father has a right to refusal. So yes, her virginity can be taken, and guess what? That's legitimate. It doesn't change anything. So if that's what you want in your package, let that be known. That means you don't cross that line. Because men were wicked. The hearts of men were wicked from a long time, right? And they'll do this, they'll bring up this report just to tarnish that woman's career, that woman's reputation. Because you know how the shame and disgrace that comes with it when you're in your father's house and you do those things. It's not like today you're living in a father's house at young age, you start doing all these things, and it's normal in this culture that we're living in. But back then, that would be a big shame. That would be a disgrace. Those were things that would make you walk and hold down your head. Today, you can do that and you're walking like this, proud. So we have to see the difference in the culture. So if a man brings up this evil report, guess what? The father had the tokens of her virginity to say, see, she was a virgin, this man is a liar. Or at least then, even if the woman was not a virgin, guess what? He can say, see, in the betrothal agreement, we had already agreed on this, that I had refused a guy of my daughter before. So she's not a virgin. So how now you're coming with this? The next thing that you need to list in your terms of agreement is what are the non-negotiables? Because that's one of the things a lot of people do not do, and I cannot understand. Like, if you're not into, say, polygyny, that should be your non-negotiable. Anything that you're not into, that can be detrimental. You have to know what your non-negotiables are. There are other things that you can alter, but your non-negotiables, they stand. What are the grounds of separation? What things make you fall apart? You know that, okay, adultery, that definitely. So there's no talking once it happens. There's no talking. You can apologize all you want. You can do what you can feel all the sorrow you want. Just know that there's no reconciliation on my end. That's an automatic ground for separation. And we know we have the power to forgive, so it we can say it depends, yes, because it's a difference if somebody is intentionally doing that as opposed to a person who has gone through a certain experience, got some terrible news, and lost themselves in the moment. Don't know where they are, don't know who they're with. They just lost. Get the there's a you got a phone call, the passing of somebody close, very close to you. It breaks your spirit. That's not intentional adultery. So you can understand the person's situation and you can say, okay, I forgive and I'm willing to reconcile because I know this is not her. I know this is not him. So yes, you have the power to forgive, you have the power to reconcile. We have to look at the intention, not just the action. Other things that you need to state upfront is the agreement of children, right? So in the book of Tobit, he mentioned about he wanted them to come back so they can see their grandchildren before they die. Let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 24 and verse 60. It says, and they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. Right? That's a very important thing to discuss when you're getting with someone because some people don't want children. Some people will do cruel things, like the scripture says, the heart of man is corrupt from the evil that was sown in the hearts from the days of Adam. I know of a situation where this woman got married to this man. The woman put in, what's the name of it? It's not Marina. I think it starts with a P, right? So she knows she cannot get pregnant. And the man was there trying and trying. They went to doctor. The woman is even going to doctor with her husband, knowing that she put that, what's the name of it? It starts with a P. That she put inside her, cannot get pregnant, and you know you don't want children. You know you why would you put the man in this position? Especially if you already have your kids, or say you have two kids, or say you just don't want kids. Why would you even do that? No, you're gaslighting the man, make it seem as if something is wrong with his sperm count. That is serious level of wickedness. Men, the male species, we do wickedness sometimes, we do evil sometimes, a lot of times. But what a woman does is more deadly than death itself. So we have to state those things at the beginning. At the first date, whatever you stand on, you say it at the first date so you don't have to waste your time. What are your thoughts about children? What are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about that? What are your principles? Where your morality lies? Where your standards? Okay, this is what you are. This is what I'm about. They don't coincide. You're a nice person. You're very beautiful. You're very kind, but our values don't match. I cannot put myself in this position. You have to know what you can accept, what you cannot accept, and things that you can tolerate are things that you won't tolerate. So some things might not be non-negotiables, right? But some things you can tolerate. So this is not much of a big deal. I can work with that. Even if you never change this about you, I can live with that. But you see, you are into polygyny. That's a non-negotiable for me. You're a really nice guy. You're really kind, but this one thing. Okay, you're a nice woman, you're very kind, very polite, very strong-willed, intelligent, you know your scriptures, but guess what? Your your beliefs about this Bible, we share two different things. I believe we are the Israelite, we should keep this law. You believe that no, you can still eat pork, this and that. In the household is gonna confuse our children. You know, we there's a line there. There's a gulf fix between us because this is a non-negotiable. How do you even cross that line? No, endow a woman to be. How does a man endow a woman to be his wife? Let's go to the book of Exodus. What's it? Exodus chapter 20, 22, verse 16. It says, "And if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife." The woman is not betrothed. Her family, her father, her mother, her brother, her uncle did not pledge her unto any man. A man sees her out there, give her some sweet words, got her into bed. So, how do you endow this woman to be your wife? You have to go get the father's blessings. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 22, and we'll start at verse 28. It says, "If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, which is not pledged to another man by her family, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found," now it becomes public, "then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. Because he hath humbled her, he may not put her away all his days." So you see, when you don't follow the principles of marriage that the Most High set up, when you don't follow it, guess what? There's something else there for you. You know what this man cannot do? When you don't go to her family from the beginning, when you try to bypass that stage that the Most High told you, you cannot put her away. So you are deprived of even divorcing this woman. So you saw this pretty woman out there, go and have sex with her. Guess what? No matter how toxic she is, no matter how she keeps asking the question, okay, this, that. Guess what? You're deprived of the privilege of putting her away. So Deuteronomy 24, verse 3 does not apply to you. You cannot give a bill of divorce. And touching on divorce, right? It says write a bill of divorce. But you'll notice you never see where it says write an agreement of the marriage, of the wedding, of the betrothal, or whatever it is. Everything back then was done orally. In the time of Adam, there was not a written language, it was just a spoken language. So, like I said, customs started coming into place. So, they started a writing system started. So now you can write these things, but Adam would not have written a document to, right? It's the same way Abraham sent his servant to the woman's family. Everything that he said was a declaration of the betrothal process, but it was done orally. So yes, customs will evolve, but it does not disannul what the original thing was. So yes, we live in a world now where the state makes a union legal, but guess what? Primarily, it's the families. Once the families agree, that is when it becomes legal. So if you go out there, take a woman, put a ring on her finger, let the state sign, whatever, and the father does not approve of it, he has a right to refusal. So we cannot try to take this Roman wedding ceremonies or these new customs and make void the law. If you're living the law, this should be your primary thing. Understanding that it is the families that makes the union legal, not the state, not the paper, not your priest, not your pastor, not your congregation, not the two families. Now we can adjust to these new customs whichever way we want, as long as we understand what our ground principles and standards are. So we can always discern. So what is written in the Bible isn't a problem. It is the culture from which we're teaching. And most of us, we do not try to understand the ancient culture because we think it does matter. Where did you get that from? If the culture did not matter, why would they do what they do to it? It's like, okay, the color doesn't matter, but why do you do this? Or the names do not matter, but why do you change it? It's the same thing. The cultural practices matter. That's what a culture is. That's what makes it the culture, the practices. So how can you be doing things contrary to a culture, but say you're living the culture? So I hope this gives a understanding of what the ancient marriage is, what the betrothal is, so we can make a clear distinction between new customs and what is actually law. Shalom.